of being upfront with the pricing. And so clients, when they're not getting surprised with bills, on the end. And that's one thing with hourly rate is to manage the expectation of the client on billing and to explain why you've billed. Obviously, I don't know how Green and CPA does their billing, but it's a client communication on what you've done on their file. I spent 3 hours. Why? We did this, and this. Versus a flat fee, you just charge the fee and you just get the job done. And so that's those things you take into account.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on this week's Tax Rep Network podcast. I'm Eric Green. I am joined by Patrick Wanzer. Patrick is a CPA and CTRC. He is in Indianapolis. I've known Patrick for over a decade now and is one of our trainers at Tax Rep Network. And, it's so funny. This topic ended up, you and I were just kind of having this conversation and we were like, we really should do a podcast on this. Up until now, for the folks listening, I've been promoting the idea that, especially once you understand how offers work and the rest, and you've done your upfront analysis, you can make a lot of money doing this on a flat fee, right? You get so much money up front. We know that we don't do anything until we get all the documents from the client. Mm-hmm. And then we had a formula. We're going to spend $1,500 to $2,000 of billable time, but we're charging $3,500. So we have profit there. And then on the backside, the work's basically been done. So the other $3,000 will come time we have a new administration, DOGE, and we don't have to rehash this. The chaos at the IRS, 25% staffing reduction. They got rid of the people that answer the phones. On the one hand, Patrick, you and I both, we're very busy, right? The chaos of the government, people can't get through. But are you finding what I'm finding, which is trying to get anything done with the government has become challenging?
Absolutely. It's become challenging, and the delay in response for anything filed with the IRS is doubled or tripled in time. If you're filing with, I don't know if it's a cap appeal or if you're filing even just a response to a CP 2000 or any of its type of notice, the amount of time it takes to hear anything. We do follow-up calls to the IRS to say, where are you on this? Did you receive this? Or the number of 60 and 90-day letters the IRS is sending out in perpetuity over and over again. We need 60 days. We need 60 days. On something that seems pretty simple for them to resolve and get it off their plate. We are absolutely seeing that. And it's increasing the amount of work that we're having to do and the amount of time we have to spend on these issues that at first we think are pretty simple to resolve. Why is it taking this long? And to rethink, are we losing money because we build it on a flat fee thinking this is the amount of time it's going to take, but the IRS is taking so much longer because of all the chaos that is going on at the IRS.
Yeah, no, it's really, we were rethinking our entire approach. Now, when this first happened and DOGE gave everyone their walking papers, you can leave and, get your buyout. We had appeals officers, we had cases pending. We had one case we were going back and forth. They had the taxpayer owing $850,000. We thought the real number was about $380,000. They were in at $425,000, and we're just going back and forth with this appeals officer. He called and said, this was on Tuesday. He said, I'm leaving Friday at 3:00. He said, I'd like to resolve this. Make me an offer. And I was like, well, we're at $380,000. I'm like, I have to ask the client, but $385,000? He said, sold to the highest bidder. Now, part of me thought, is he drunk?
Right.
We got the acceptance letter on Friday morning faxed over to us for $385,000. And I said, I hope this continues. This is great.
Right.
Settled because they wanted off their plate. What happened is you reach that tipping point, and now they're like, oh yeah, no, your case is going back into inventory. So now these clients who've been waiting a year and a half, finally have our appeals hearing to find out the person left or has been laid off or whatever else, and now they're back in inventory. It's really clients don't like that.
They don't, and it prolongs things, especially if they're in some sort of litigation from a divorce. I work with a lot of family law attorneys, and I do a lot of tax training with them. And I have a client who we filed an appeal on a lien discharge petition because the IRS says, well, our taxes were assessed before the state taxes were. Well, okay, but the state taxes were assessed beforehand, and they can't sell the house unless the state taxes get paid. And this Indiana is weird. And those state taxes should be paid before the IRS gets, some of their money, which allows the sale to go through. Well, we appealed that about 13 months ago and still are waiting to hear back from somebody from the appeals office going, hey, where we stand on this to get to get the lien discharged. It's just so he can sell the house to get the government money. We want to give the government money. And they're still taking their time to move on it. And I wonder if it's just being passed on from person to person to person. And I'm sure you've seen this. You're dealing with an appeals officer who all of a sudden is no longer there, and the case has to go back to the beginning, and you're starting all over.
We had a case where we had submitted all the documents to the revenue officer. Revenue officer calls in, I think, April. We're deeming the person uncollectible. In July, we get a letter from a new revenue officer asking for everything all over again for this taxpayer. So I said, and by the way, this is why you always respond in writing. Instead of calling, I faxed and said, hey, we just dealt with this. This is the revenue officer's name, the ID number here. We submitted all this. They told us they were deeming him uncollectible in April. I don't know why you would pick the same case up. I think there's a disconnect. Can you call me to discuss it? I don't hear anything. 2 weeks later, they levy the taxpayer, everything, wages, bank account, the whole thing. I contact now the director of collection, Hank Key, and Hank, hey, look, can you get me in touch with the supervisor, because this revenue officer is not responding to me. And I told them the story. They said, we're looking into it. But 2 days later, I send another message to him. I email him and said, Hank, can I just get in touch with the supervisor? One of his assistants emailed me and said, Eric, nobody knows who the supervisor is. There's been so much turnover that we actually, this is the director of collections, don't know who the supervisor is for this collection group. And so then that day they faxed over all the reliefs and they sent us a letter. They closed it as uncollectible and we got it all straightened out. That's what you're dealing with over at the government. So it raises this issue about as tax pro, what are we doing about this? And so my staff came to me and said, do we charge more? Do we get rid of these flat fees? Because there's more follow-up, right? There's more emails. There's more, which, let's be honest, as business owners, that's cutting into the profit margin that we originally had. To the point where we have now made a shift here that we're more and more just taking a larger retainer and billing hourly, because, and we're telling clients that we don't know how long this is going to take.
Sure.
And I have some that get very angry. Well, I'm hiring you. I said, listen to me. You don't understand something. This is what you voted for. I mean, maybe not you personally. This is what America wanted. They voted. Okay. So when they said, when he said he's going to get rid of the IRS, what did you think he meant? And I said, I happen to have a client who was very close to the president, was on his transition committee, and we're trying to resolve something for him. And when he got all pissed off, I said, this is what people voted for. What did you think when he said, I'm going to get rid of the IRS? He's going to get rid of everyone except your appeals officer? And so this is what it is. I said, we're making more money because we have to do more. I can't guarantee you I can get to a human being and get this sorted out. And
absolutely.
You want us to stay on it? You want us to send letters? Pay for it. The other default for me, and this is what happens when you become middle-aged and cranky, it is...
I'm getting there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's America. Still a free country. You do it. You pick up.
Right.
You call them. You can do. What's wrong with you? I
absolutely
me to do it, but then you pay me for it.
Right.
So to kind of sum this up, what we're doing is we've really moved more to $7,500 retainer billed hourly.
Gotcha.
And it does a couple things. And we were also talking about this. It definitely weeds out the tire kicker.
Absolutely. And there's always, the tire kickers will always be there. It's a small issue where they want the free advice and is to, to weed them out. And the pricing is the number one way to get rid of them and still maintain a professional demeanor. Is like, yeah, that's their cost. Sorry. And then they will move on to somebody. And if they aren't a tire kicker, they'll come back. I know you've told stories if you had, they meet with you 2 years later, they're coming back to you finally ready to work or act on their issue.
Oh yeah, no, we've had that. So with Ignition, what I find interesting is it alerts us when someone signs the agreement and pays.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I've had stuff a month and a half later, I get an alert And we're so busy. I'm like, who is this?
Right.
And Maggie's so said, oh, remember so-and-so, they had reached out to us. This is what's going on. I'm glad her brain works better than mine. Okay, good. I don't remember. No, but we had, with the automated enforcement, it's funny. I had somebody who I met with years ago, and at the time we took $2,500 upfront for the analysis. All of a sudden, one day we get an envelope with that letters from like 3 years ago signed with a check. And so I had to have Maggie reach back out to him, say, actually, we're $3,500 now. That was 3 years ago. Yeah. And they sent in the other 1,000, sent a new letter. They signed the new letter, sent the other 1,000. Yeah, no, it's one of those things that people call and they want to I just want to run something by you. One thing, as you start to do a lot of it, I think what professionals will realize, if you're going to, at some point you start to get known for this, right? Because now people start referring and all the rest. Again, it's like, there's like a tipping point. I'm not sure when that is, but at some point it tips, and whether you're marketing or not, you're still going to keep getting, because people now the word is out. People know who you are, all the rest. And I just want to run something by you. If you're going to do free consultations, you'll get to the point where all you're going to end up doing all day long is free consultations for people that may or may not use you.
Right. And that we have an issue, like we charge for the consultation, but then if they retain, we apply it to the fees going forward. So it makes it free. It's a free consultation for them on the back end. So it'll end up being free. We have to explain it to them. Sometimes people get a little cranky about that, but it's we don't lose the hour ahead of time before, and we can sit there and have that discussion with them. Also, we charge just $750 just for an account analysis before we do anything, just to pull their transcripts and look at their, do the power of attorney and that sort of thing. And that's not dealing with anybody at the IRS. So we can definitely still work on a flat fee on that, but that's $750. And if it's a business and a personal account, it's $1,500, $750 for each. Now that's just to get a baseline of where they stand, because I'm sure you found out clients aren't always the most truthful or knowledgeable about the tax situation. And they'll say one thing and you'll look at it going, well, that's not even remotely close to what's going on here. And so before we do anything, we charge that fee just to kind of get an idea of where we stand.
Oh yeah, no, same thing. Because it's hard to explain to people, because they just want an answer. And the truth is, we need to do that, because without that, we're flying blind. Are all these returns filed timely? How much time remains on the statute? And it doesn't happen often, but every now and then, excuse me, bless. Every now and then, we will get somebody that says, "I just need to." I said, "Look, you owe 100. If you filed these 2 years on time, this should be roughly the time spent, and on a payment plan, this is what they would want."
Right.
And they'll say, "You're sure of that?" I said, "Nope, that's my best guess."
Yes.
Because you don't want me to do the work. So if you file them on time, if they were late, then you have more time and you might be able to get a lower payment. You may be not eligible for that offer. I don't know. And usually that's enough to get them to want to pay to do. And usually that comes from the accountants. The accountants who refer to us, mm-hmm. I'll do a free call with them, just, be to the relationship. When they get into, here's the situation, and I'll say, well, look, we would have to do this, X, Y, Z. The client's not going to want to do all that. All right. I mean, what do you want me to tell you?
Right. And are you fishing for a discount on something where that just isn't going to happen? I'm being a CPA, of course, I'm in the unique position. I prepare the back tax as well. I don't believe Green and Squatters does the tax return preparation. So we can then charge on that end. Okay, we do the back tax return, but we're even moving away from either a flat fee on tax return preparation or increasing the price. Because if it's an S corp return, okay, it's neat if it's all done, but if it's not done, you have to do the bookkeeping, or you have to pull the bank statements to recreate the P&L because they had terrible books. Well, now we're looking at, how do you know how much that's going to take? And you have to do that on an hourly basis, or you're most likely going to be losing money on something like that.
Unless the person shows up with a bookkeeper.
Right.
You can say, look, as long as you provide me these documents, we're not auditing them, we're not reviewing them, we're going to take it, just get the return done. That's your fee. If you then need us to review or do the bookkeeping, That's literally a whole separate engagement, if you will.
Well, I had a client, we just filed the offer in compromise, but I had it finished and I'm looking at the return and he had just started pulling Social Security the year before. Didn't tell me he was pulling Social Security. So I'm like, okay, well, there's $45,000 in income we didn't include. That bumped him out of being, an offer candidate, but it wasn't included on his personal return. The money also wasn't on there. I said, you need to go back to your CPA or the return and tell him, hey, this 45 was not included on your return. And they also did an S-Corp return. Well, they came back with an amended S-Corp return that reduced the income from the S-Corp by about $45,000. And the income for the Social Security was about $45,000. And I'm like, they're an EA, they're licensed. I'm not going to audit the return, although I have questions on it, but okay, I'm not doing that. It's not on mine. We're going to go with that return. Again, it's not an unenrolled preparer. It's a licensed EA who does this. Okay, but you're right. Even though I'm not going to question the professional and call them going, where did you get this? How'd you do this? But I'm like, this is kind of interesting. Why did you forget the Social Security income in the first place? And how did you find all this extra, they filed an extra 1099 to get $12,000 more in expense. They actually filed the 1099. I'm like, okay, well, we have the filed 1099 here now. So we went with the return, but dang it, I'm not 100% sure how accurate that is.
No. And I think the lesson here for a tax pro is to really make sure that you can still get everything done with the government. You can all of that. It just might be more than it may just take more.
Yeah.
Because of the chaos, because, they don't know who the group manager is, whatever.
Sure.
To try to get this stuff done. So to factor that into your pricing, if you are going to do flat fee, I would just increase the price.
Absolutely. And there are benefits to flat fee, but one of the drawbacks is scope creep. Flat fee, you have to be very specific on what you're doing for them. I'm doing just the penalty abatements. I'm not including tax returns and things like that, because that's where flat fees, people started throwing in little bits at a time. Hourly, you accommodate that scope creep, but then how do you tell people up front what the cost is going to be? You don't know, you estimate. And I can't possibly know how many hours this is going to take without looking at any information at all.
Right.
And they kind of want you to tell them up front a flat fee amount. Even if it's hourly, tell me what the total amount is going to be. It depends. I don't know. And I think that's an answer people hate the most, but it's the most important answer to have is it depends. We have to look at it and do the evaluation.
And, and I've actually had that, and actually had once a client pay it. It was an offer. This is probably 15 years ago. They want a flat fee.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't do flat fee. I'm like, I don't know. We're going to appeals for it. They said, I need one fee. Now this is at the time. I said 10,000. They paid it.
Nope.
And again, submitted the offer, back and forth with the offer specialist. It got accepted. We never ended up having to go to appeals. So back then they probably would have gotten away with 4,500. But the flip side is, had it been rejected, had I taken it to appeals and all the rest,
mm-hmm.
It would have been around, 8,000 or whatever it was. So the point being is that if you really need a number, I can give you a number, but it's going to be high because I've got to factor in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That brings me back to my very first case I ever did was an innocent spouse case, and I had no idea what I was doing. Of course, I literally never done a tax resolution. And she comes in, she sits down, she asks me, do you do this stuff? Absolutely. I do them all the time. Have you done an innocent spouse? Oh, many. Yeah, duh. Of course I've done that. And I remember walking out going, well, I guess I'm going to learn how to do an innocent spouse. And I actually called you, and you actually walked me through, here's the things you need on an innocent spouse. This is back in 2015 or 16. But I only charged like $3,000 for it. And I was going to do everything. I went to audit it or appeals and everything. Learning that, okay, if you're going to do flat fee, you need to learn to price it correctly. And ended up not having to go to appeals. We won it on the first filing and all that stuff. And that's great. But even then, I don't think I charged enough. And that was the learning curve for me. But flat fee is great, but you have to really build into, through your experience, what it all is going to entail. And then specifically carve out, this does not include any appeal work. That is a separate engagement if we have to go to appeal.
Yep. Nope. Our engagement letters in our members area, we normally state this is to prepare and submit whatever. In the event it's denied and we determine that we need to go to appeals, that is a separate engagement and will require a separate retainer.
And if they get they'll get upset and cranky about it. But if it's the IRS is incorrect in their assessment and you have to go to appeals, it's like, we didn't do that. I tell myself, these aren't my facts. I didn't do this. You're the one who got yourself into trouble. We can get you out of it, resolve the situation. But these aren't my facts. So we're just going to go the path we need to go to resolve this for you. But it is on you.
My former partner, Bob Percy, who's now deceased, told me that. He said, Eric, always remember, we didn't create this disaster. We're just here to help clean up the mess. And right. that's the way to approach it. And
I learned that from family law attorneys. People ask them, how do you deal with all that, all the emotional baggage of being a family law attorney, custody and all that stuff? And one of them told me, he goes, they're not my facts. I'm hired to step in, do a job, and present the best result possible, and then I step out. And that's what we do. And to learn not to get emotionally involved with your client, because then that can really create some issues. They're not our facts, to step in. And that's how I handle it.
No, I didn't tell them to not report something. I didn't tell them to not file. I didn't, right. And so, they did this long before they showed up in my office. So now I'm being paid, same thing. I'm being paid to step in, do a job, and then leave.
Just like if my air conditioning goes out, I pay some guy to step in, repair the air conditioner, and step out. It's the same thing. So let me ask you this. Do you still do flat fees on certain things, though, that you're not going to have to, it's not going to expand because of the chaos of the IRS? Like I said, our account analysis is on our end. It's a flat fee because I'm not dealing with the IRS. I can pull the transcripts regardless of who was at the IRS.
Yeah. We will. I mean, again, the upfront facts, and sometimes things will come in. They rent an apartment, W-2 employee, was self-employed, now they're not, whatever, where I can look at this and say, okay, even if it is a follow-up, whatever, there's not much to fight about here.
Right.
And so, we'll still do flat fees, but especially if it's something we got to get on right away, I tend to go with the bigger retainer hourly. Because we're now under the gun. I got to jump on this now. It might take phone calls daily to try to get to somebody. Whereas before I could count on pretty much one phone call, get through to somebody, and I knew we could get this sort of, sorted out 90% of the time.
Sure.
Now that's dropped to maybe 50% of the time.
Okay.
So yeah, no, we still do flat fees, but I think the lesson here is just to be careful about it. You make sure you're picking the right cases to do flat fee, and there's nothing wrong with it. But if it's one of these where you can always go up.
Absolutely. And if you do a flat fee, learn from each experience, because I've done a flat fee, you do with this client, but then this one, it expands a lot more than you really expected, but the sign the engagement amount. Take that experience into the next time you have a client that comes with a similar issue going, okay, either hourly retainer or increase your flat fee by $1,000 to cover it or something to that effect. Because all these cases are unpredictable at certain levels. You may have think as a slam dunk, and then you get an appeals officer who's kind of a knucklehead and a jerk and is going in a direction. You're like, how the hell they decide to do that? And you have to then fight them on a front you didn't expect.
Right. No, it's interesting times.
Absolutely. So with retainer pricing, though, do you still do your assessment as a separate billing and then the offer as a separate billing? Or if it's just going to be hourly, you just quote it and then you just do all of it? Because I'll do my analysis as a flat fee separate. And then if they qualify for an offer, we then assess the fee for the offer as a separate fee going forward, or an installment agreement or something to that effect.
If it's a straight up analysis, we'll still do it flat fee.
Okay.
The problem we're getting is we're seeing a lot of folks coming in. The government says I owe this. I don't know why.
Gotcha.
Got it. So now, am I doing a FOIA? Do we have to get wage and income reports? Was there the transcripts? Was there an adjustment? We might spend $3,000-$4,000 just investigating.
Yes.
What the hell happened? And so I got another one this morning. Same thing. They're saying we owe $245,000, and they said we don't know why. And I said, well, were you audited? I said, do you have a tax preparer? I mean, so now we're already starting in kind of the investigation part. What I would do there is so we've quoted them a retainer. We're going to go through all of that. If we determine that they owe it, then the analysis from that point forward, I would do that as a flat fee and, kind of go from there. But where I have people that say, look, I owe $117,000. They've been leaving me alone. For these following years, what can I do? Yeah, we'll just do a flat fee. It's an analysis. I mean, we will pull transcripts just again, for CSED and all that. But yeah, no, that I'll do at a flat fee. But we're seeing less of that and more of the I don't know what's going on. I don't know. We've had people call and say, I think I owe around 400,000. I don't know though. And I said, did you get something? Yeah, but I lost it.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Absolutely.
Years, we don't know whatever. So now it's, we need a bigger retainer and we're going to bill hourly and we sort this out with.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I even had a client with one of the tire kickers call and they asked me what my fees were and I told them that it was fees and they're like, well, it's kind of high. They said, I can do it myself and you can just walk me through how to do it. And I'm like, no, no, because that's basically me doing it. And I'm not putting my license on something like that. So that's not going to happen. You got to watch out for that stuff. When it comes to penalty abatements, we charge it. That's one of the areas you can charge a contingency. And is that something that falls into the realm of, do you do hourly or do you do flat fee contingencies? Does that change dealing with the penalty abatement? First time abatement may be different than a reasonable cause as well.
Right. For that, if it's a really big penalty, we might consider a contingent fee because now I'm willing to, gamble.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is also getting paid.
Well, that's true.
It's one thing if we're getting a refund. It's another thing if we're just trying to get it abated. How is this person going to pay me?
Right.
And so we have done hybrid agreements where we take $5,000 up front, and what we get is we get 30% minus the 5, right? So in other words, you have something in the kitty to cover the time.
That's a good point. I never thought of that, but that's an excellent point. So
right. I mean, with penalty abatement, it's always a wild card. And so that is one I don't tend to do flat fee. The other thing is sometimes it's pulling teeth to get documentation out of people.
Well, true. That's very true.
And the other thing too is sometimes I put it on them. I've gotten, we had one where it was a clearly documented medical issue. Get me the medical documentation. They sent us a memory stick, and I'm not kidding, 218,000 pages.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, surgeries, all kinds of other stuff. I told them, I said, this timeline you had sent me in an email? I just want those documents. I told them, I said, I need to charge you $10,000 if you want me to go through this entire memory stick.
Right.
I said, I can't do this. So what we're looking for. You go find it and send it to me. And they did.
Sure. That's still funny though. They just kind of expect you to work magic. They just give it to you and then you're just going to work magic. And then, and the amount of time it takes, we'll charge you for it and do it, even though we really don't want to, not something like that. And then that's where you can charge not a usury rate, but a high rate enough to get them to go, all right, we'll do it ourselves. We'll get you what you need ourselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had clients who do one of these. Look, I'm hiring. I only want you. I don't want any of your people. I don't want anyone else touching this. It's got to be you. My response is, okay, that retainer, that $5,000 that we asked for,
sure.
I got to make it 15. Let me send you a new letter.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, at my rate, if you're going to have me do, if you want me to go through all your documents and do all of this stuff at my hourly rate, I said, let's say it's an audit. I have a controller who's a certified bookkeeper who will do it for half the price hourly and do it faster. I have folks that fill in the forms, use the software. They're better at it than I am. Generally, the reason we can keep it at 5 or 7,500 or whatever is because of that. But I mean, I'll do it if you really want. Understand, I'm probably going to be a little bit slower, and at my hourly rate, that usually is enough to get them to be like, oh, but your people are trained, so yeah, okay, I'll go with your people. I've kind of thought about this with like surgery. I could see saying I've come to Yale because I want the guy that wrote the book doing my surgery, and I might tell him, I want you, doc. I don't want an intern no offense to them. I know they need to get trained. They can sit and watch.
Right.
But you, because it's my life on the line.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
On the other hand, I wouldn't tell, look, I need you. I want you to meet me at the curb, bring me in. You're going to do the prep, put the sewed booty socks on me, whatever the hell it is they do.
Right.
Sure, you'd be like, Yeah, no, we're not doing that. There are nurses and medical staff that do that.
Right.
Obviously. But yeah, no, I've had a couple times. I want you to do it. I'm like, look, to do the rep, to do all this other shit. No, that's what I got the staff for. I mean, if you want to pay for it, now the truth is I'm going to have them do it anyway and I'll just review it.
Right.
That's what you want? Sure.
Well, right. But it's interesting that that's how you can, not control clients, but that's how you really can kind of get them in line. And I don't know if your firm does this, if you charge a 0.1 for every email that a client sends. Family law attorneys will charge a 0.1 every time a client sends an email, and then they send 57,000 emails in a day. And then they get this huge bill. And it's that's one way you can control the communication. So you're not getting inundated by, because a flat fee, they think they have complete access to you at all times, and you can't assess anything else and control the client that way. And sometimes a billable rate allows you to do that, to get them to chill out, calm down, stop emailing me 50 times a day.
Yep. No. It's you hit them in the pocketbook, and that usually is enough to sharpen their focus a little bit.
Sure.
That they know that they can't just randomly email you whenever time of day or night.
Right.
I do have one client who we do planning for some other stuff, who is, if she's not a billionaire, she's really close. And she's the one person that will tell me, I'm going to drive up, I want to sit with you. And she'll say, Brent, point blank, bill me for whatever you want to bill me, but I want to sit with you and go through this. I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't matter if we're in Zoom or anything. I'll bill whatever I bill. But she's the one person that's like, I'm not going to scan and send you stuff. I'm going to bring it. Charge me whatever you want to charge. Okay.
Absolutely.
And if they sit at the copier and charge their time to scan your documents, okay.
But you're upfront and they know about it. They're not getting the bill on the back end going, what the heck was this for? Or I could have just mailed it to you if you told me that. Why did I bring? They know ahead of time. They know upfront. And that's the importance of being upfront with the pricing. And so clients, when they're not getting surprised with bills on the end. And that's one thing with hourly rate, is to manage the expectation of the client on billing and to explain why you've billed. I don't know how Green and does their billing, but it's a client communication of what you've done on their file. Right. I spent 3 hours. Why? We did this, and this. Versus a flat fee, you just charge the fee and you just get the job done. And so that's those things you take into account on which way you're going to go.
Exactly. So, no, I think this is great. I hope people have learned a little bit of what they should be thinking about in terms of pricing. It's interesting times. A great time to be doing this.
Well, it sure is.
Booming
and outstanding time. Yeah. And, different markets are going to assess different fees. I mean, if you're a CPA in Helena, Montana, the fee is probably not going to be as much as New York City. It's just markets are going to determine that. And so you kind of take what, suggestions on pricing, understand, your own market as well. These are suggestions that people have on what to charge. So.
Yep. No, absolutely. It's funny. I got brought into a case by a partner at a firm in Manhattan, and he's on with the client. And so he calls me on his cell phone, and he says, Eric, what's your hourly rate? And at the time I was like $475 or whatever I was, 75. There's a pause. And then I hear him on the phone saying, look, his rate is $700, a little cheaper than mine, blah, blah, blah. He hangs up. He said $450 or $475. He said, they're going to think you're the paralegal. I can't charge them $475. Apparently I'm $700 now. All right. Isn't new.
Okay. Fine. I'm not. Darn it. Twist my arm to more money. Absolutely.
And then there have been times when I have a friend who's a tax attorney in Mobile, Alabama, and like their senior partners are all billing $350.
Mm-hmm.
We're billing $650. It is more expensive to be here than in Mobile, Alabama, but
sure. But also your experience dictates what the hourly rate is. I mean, if you're a entry level, it's $200, $250 an hour, but you being a partner, your fee is going to be a heck of a lot more than $250 an hour. But you take into all the experience of all those years doing it justifies that amount. People see the tip of the iceberg. They don't see the entire iceberg of all the work that went in to get to that.
And the truth is, again, because I'm not doing everything on the case, you get a blended rate. I mean, our
that's true.
Legal assistants, at $75 an hour are doing a lot of the input, all that stuff. All right.
Yep.
And then Amanda, who's an EA, who's at 350 an hour is, prepping, reviewing the 433 and all that. So that by the time Eric's involved for maybe 2 hours of the 20 that went into this.
Right. Exactly.
You're not paying $650 an hour times all these hours. It's really a blended rate because of that.
Exactly. So it's an interesting time, I think, with all the chaos, and who knows in 3 years how that's going to change, where the IRS will go. But it's an interesting decision to make between the two, and both have their pluses and minuses, and you really kind of have to weigh them for yourself. Which one works best? But you're right. The $3,000 for a filing, you're going to lose money on it now. You go to a retainer at an hourly base, or you increase that flat fee if you want to stay there.
Listen, Patrick, thanks for taking the time to do this. Everyone,
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening in on this week's podcast, and we'll see you next week on podcast. And keep an eye on the fees.
Absolutely.
A lot of money, a lot of work, but make sure you keep your eyes on the fees. And here's the other thing. My last thought on this: if you do misquote, it's not the end of the world. Like if we misquoted 5,000 and we spent 7,000 a time, yeah, it sucks. But you know what? We learned, right? So next time we'll just adjust.
Exactly.
You can always adjust, as you go. So if the worst thing is you got slightly underpaid on a case, what you don't want to be doing is doing that on every case.
Exactly. But that's where the experience comes in. I'm doing it, and it's a great area to be in, and it'll take your stops and starts and fits and all that, but it'll all come out slowly as you learn and get better. It'll all work out in the end.
Exactly. So everyone, listen, thanks for listening in. Patrick, thank you for doing this, and see you on next week's podcast.
Okay. Thank you.